When talking about the cloud, it might seem like we are talking about something intangible, but that's not quite right. The cloud refers to servers that are accessed over the internet, but they have a physical address too. An increasing number of businesses are turning to the cloud to save costs and drive efficiencies, a trend exacerbated by the COVID-19 pandemic. In fact, cloud technology adoption is predicted to grow by 35% in 2021, reaching $120 billion. In this episode of Tech Talk, Louise and I speak with Stéphane Zema, Technology Director at PwC Luxembourg. He tells us why businesses should move to the cloud and what's the best way to go about it. So, let's jump right into it.
So, welcome to a new episode of Tech Talk. This is the episode number 15, season 4, and we call it the one on cloud transformation. Because precisely we are talking about cloud, aren't we, Carla?
Yes, we are. And we have a special guest.
We have a special guest who actually works for PwC Luxembourg, and he's technology director, and his name is Stéphane Zema. As like I always say, I hope I pronounced correctly the name. Welcome, Stéphane.
Thank you. So good afternoon, Louise. Good afternoon, Carla. So it's a big pleasure to be here with you this afternoon.
It's our pleasure to have you.
Our pleasure as well. I just want to tell you a little story. So we are now at the studio in Crystal Park, and Stefan was also, of course, supposed to be with us, but he had a small constraint this morning, a small personal story. So now he is from home. So if you see any kind of different sound between the two. Between the two sites, that's the reason. But we will try to have the best quality possible. And here we go.
And now we are in the dark, Luis.
And now we are in the dark. What happened with the studio? This is, I don't know. This is part of the cloud system we have here.
Too many
Would it be? Okie doke. So let's kick off, Carla. Maybe you can ask the first
question. So yes, so we have a very wide audience for our podcast with different backgrounds, and that's why we would like to start always with the very, very basic. So can you explain to our listeners who might not know what the cloud, that seems like almost the big brother, what is it?
Yes, so what is cloud? So for me, before everything, it's about having an access to remote resources over the internet, remote shared resources. I think the word shared is important because we have mutualized resources between different parties. So these resources could be infrastructure, could be applications, but the point is that you're outsourcing the management of your IT infrastructure to a cloud provider. So yourself, you can focus on your core business, on your core activities. So on the one hand, you are transferring some responsibilities, you are transferring a risk to a third party. On the other hand, what is good is you don't need to purchase equipment, to install it, to hire people to maintain that. So I think it's one element. Another element is that your model also is changing, because in the past, before cloud, the investment used to be, under a capex model. So capex for a capital expenditure, meaning that we were investing upfront costs, like purchasing hardware that was depreciating over 5 years, 7 years. But now with cloud, we are under an OPEX model, so operating expenses, where we pay a monthly fee in order to access a service. And this service would include the cost of the assets, include the license and the maintenance and support fees. So for me, with cloud, in one sense, your IT infrastructure becomes a commodity, just like water, just like electricity, because you have an access to a service on demand, and then you pay as you go. If you need infrastructure, you just turn on the tap. If you do not need it, you just turn off the tap. So for me, that's a definition of cloud. So you can really streamline your IT operations And on the other hand, you can accelerate also deployment of new solutions.
So I'm going to ask maybe a silly question, but that means is there a physical place, or is all somewhere in the cloud, or is there like really a location for where all these things are stored?
So basically, you always need IT infrastructure to support your data. So indeed, your data is somewhere else. It's not now within your walls, within your premises. It's just elsewhere. So it can be in another country, it can be in another region, but the fact is that you just transfer this data to a third-party provider, which consolidates data from different parties in another location.
Okay, that's clear for me. Luis, do you want to go with the second question?
Yes, let's go with a second question, which is kind of an irony, I think. Kind of, because when you read or you listen someone saying cloud transformation, I would think right away that it's the cloud will transform into something because it's the cloud transformation. Now, shouldn't be more correct to say that differently? I don't know. Maybe it's the business to cloud transformation. I don't know. I'm just saying things that make no sense, but it's just to clarify what people understand for cloud transformation is that the cloud in itself transforms, and it's actually the business going to the cloud. Isn't it like that?
Fully agree. For me, it's transforming your business to fit to the cloud, to be ready for the cloud. Because for me, cloud is really the enabler to digital transformation. So it will support many other technologies like IoT, like artificial intelligence, which need a lot of processing power. They need the unlimited or potential virtual unlimited capacity of the cloud. That's why here we're not talking about a minor transformation, and we need to adapt different part of the business. Of course, you need to adapt. You need to transform your IT organization. So, sorry, first of all, your IT environment,
Mm-hmm.
IT infrastructure, and so on.
I guess, Stefan, it also has a lot to do with the culture, I guess, no?
Yes, and that's more related to the organizational part because you need to have the people, first of all, who have the skills to design cloud application, to maintain them, but also the willingness to in order to change. Because with cloud, you are much more agile. So, I mean, your culture also needs to adapt. And I think your processes also have to adapt because many tasks are going to be automated with the cloud. So for me, it's really cloud transformation is really about transforming your business.
Mm-hmm. Let me just maybe jump to the next one because what if let's imagine we moved or we want to move everything to the cloud. Is there something that should be kept locally, like on the local servers? Do you think is that this kind of blended approach can work, or actually does it work this way?
Yes. So actually, I mean, public cloud can offer you a lot of benefits. Huh? These benefits is, time to market, its scalability, its resilience, maybe cost saving in some cases. But you have some candidates to remain, on your local servers. And I'm talking about maybe the most sensitive data, the healthcare data, maybe personal data, maybe intellectual properties. So I think it's up to each company to do their own risk assessment, really to understand what data can be put into the cloud and what data should remain on premise. And if you put them into the cloud, what controls you are going to put in place. Huh?
Okay. So just I was wondering, and this decision should be made by, it's a team decision? It's more like a top-down decision? Do you think there should be specific departments that we should meet and say, okay, this stays, this goes? I guess it
Well,
also depends on the nature of the business.
yes, but usually, I mean, you are moving to the cloud in order to be more agile, to remain competitive, to remain relevant on the markets. So usually, I mean, it's a top-down decision because you have a willingness from the top, but of course, it has to be shared by everyone from technology, of course, but your DPO also must be involved for all the data protection aspect. Your IT security must be involved. The whole organization really has to accept this change.
Okay. My next question is about your perception on how businesses in Luxembourg are doing in terms of cloud transformation journey compared to other countries. Can you tell us more or less what do you see?
So my own perception regarding Luxembourg, I think that cloud transformation in Luxembourg is slower than in other countries in the world and even in Europe. I think the main reason is that Luxembourg, an important part of the market is related to financial services, and the FS market is it's a market which is highly regulated. And in the past, it was mandatory for the actors of the FS market to host their data in Luxembourg because of the banking secrecy. So now, today in 2021, it's possible for them to put their data into the cloud. The regulator, so the CSSF, they put in place a cloud circular that clarifies what requirements FS actor need to follow. For example, having data located in the EU, encryption of data, having a proper exit strategy. So I think now that's the reason why it has tended to be slow in Luxembourg. Nevertheless, since last year, we really see an acceleration, a takeoff in terms of cloud transformation in Luxembourg. For instance, the EU institutions are taking very seriously the topic, so they're moving forward with their transformation. Some industry like logistics, like transport, they're also moving forward. We have seen even one actor that has moved very aggressively but successfully to the public cloud. And the financial service market also is, we have contact with them, and this is moving. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And do you think this acceleration is? I assume so, but correct me if I'm wrong. Is it related to the pandemic?
That could be a coincidence, but I think that since March 2020 last year, indeed, we have seen an acceleration. I think the big effort was really on workplace, applications to offer communication and collaboration services for the employee to work remotely. And actually, this company who were already cloud ready with such solution in place before the pandemic were, I think, the one who resisted the most. And I'm taking the example of PwC, where we're using cloud collaboration tool. And I think the transition for us was very, very transparent. On the other side, some entities that were not ready yet to be to the cloud, they were struggling for many, many months with their IT infrastructure. So I think indeed there was a trend anyway before the pandemic, but this trend really, the curve was much steeper after March 2020.
Okay, so we can say the pandemic was a trigger, but not necessarily
the main reason. Huh?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, at least, because the pandemic now is the star everywhere. Is the digital transformation the star. So, let's get into guidelines. So, I know you and your team work, kind of they every day, in this cloud transformation practice. And which kind of advice would you give to a business that want to start, this transformation, or it's already, on the road to do it? And based on your experience and lessons learned, what steps should this business follow?
So indeed, I think there are some key steps, key prerequisites at least to address before before jumping into the cloud. The first thing I would say, of course, and it does not need to be a large endeavor, but to assess the business case. Are you looking to reduce cost, or are you looking for something else? In all cases, I think it's important to evaluate what are your existing costs on your IT infrastructure, whether we're talking about indirect costs, direct costs, but also evaluate the future cost of your cloud solution, adding on top of that implementation costs, whatever is going to be between project management, trainings, consulting services, just to look if you have a return on investment to justify the investments. I think a second important step is about assessing what you have internally in terms of application portfolio. So it's really about assessing your existing application and decide what can go to the cloud, what should not go to the cloud. And there, you're going to look for each of these applications. What is the business criticality? Are they using sensitive data? What is the complexity of the architecture? Just from this, you're going to put in place a roadmap. Let's say this group of application is going to migrate first. This other group is going to migrate later, and so on. We've talked about financial services, and I think an important step for them is also the filing to the regulator, so to the CSSF, because in some cases the FS actors will need the approval of the regulator. Typically, if we're talking about an outsourcing which is material, they will need the approval from the regulator. So there they will have to document a lot of things like their cloud architecture, their security architecture, also their contractual aspects, what SLA do they have, but also organizational aspects. Are they really ready to cope with that? Do they have a cloud officer? Did they define clear roles and responsibilities between the cloud providers and internal teams? And I think another step, of course, is to define the right architecture, because you have to put in place the right security. For instance, who can access your infrastructure? You need to put in place your networks. For example, how you are going to connect to your remote resources. You may need to adapt also your applications, because if they are, let's say, legacy applications, they may not be adapted to go to the cloud. So you will need to do some re-architecture around that. You have to put in place some governance also to control your costs, to make sure that you're not going to end up with very huge bills at the end of the month. And of course, you have to put in place all the monitoring and supervision aspects. I think there are other things to take care in the journey, but if I would have to mention 4 or 5 key steps, this would be this one.
And Stéphane, now I go to the other side. Have you seen or experienced any failure? I mean, because I guess all these recommendations are based on things you have seen, processes of transformations you have seen. So have you seen any failure in all these years?
What not to do?
Yeah. No, I think so. Failures, maybe the word is a bit
too strong,
but it's parts. I mean, you have to fail to then redo it and succeed. So any failures is about really, I would call it experimenting, learning, and then improving. Yeah? But in things that we should avoid when moving to the cloud, I think the first thing is to avoid doing too much planning. Yeah? We like analyzing for 6 months, for 1 year, let's say your existing applications, because maybe you are scared to move forward, or because you have too many applications. but I think we have to be quicker in like plan less and try to increment to implement as soon as possible. So really starting quickly, experimenting and learning. That's for me an important point. Another point that I will mention, and sometimes we talk with clients and they agree with that, we should avoid copying the data center. So we should not copy what we have in our data center into the cloud, because as I mentioned before, you will need to adapt your application to get the benefits of the cloud. So you will need to leverage the services offered by the cloud providers. So I think re-architecting application is something that will have to be done also. I think something also that is important to take care is the people I mentioned. We may face also some resistance to the change. We could hear we are doing well right now. We have the tool, we have the knowledge, the skills to operate well like that. But I think it's very important to onboard the people in the very early stage of the project, to be clear in terms of their future responsibility, communicate that, and to upskill the people. All the aspects, of course, related to user experience, to employee experience, have to be really embedded as part of the transformation. And something also that we should not believe, it's, for instance, once you are in the cloud, all the responsibility is on cloud provider side, and you're done. You still have to do a lot of monitoring, security monitoring, contract management. So I think that's there are quite responsibility that are still remaining on the shoulders of the clients.
Wow, so it sounds quite complex and ongoing process.
Yeah, I wanted to exactly say that. I mean, what I get out of all this is plan, because planning is important, but don't get crazy with planning. Start your journey, and then the important part here is to learn from what you're doing and try to navigate as safe as possible, trying to do the right things. But in the end, it's a learning process. This is what I kept out of your explanation, Stéphane.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so Carla has a new question for you.
Yes.
Prepared? Let's go.
Well, this is actually your term, Luis. The vedette of, is that how you pronounce it? Vedette?
The vedette, yes.
Of the digital world nowadays is cybersecurity. I mean, everybody wants to touch it and talk about it, but only if you do it with art. And I'm quoting Luis Salerno here. Very deep. So what cybersecurity considerations businesses need to think about before implementing clouds, and even afterwards when it's fully integrated?
So regarding cybersecurity, so indeed we have a dedicated team working on cybersecurity matters, including for cloud. But for me, if whenever you decide to move to the cloud, you have to adopt a shared responsibility model between your cloud provider and yourself. Meaning the cloud provider will be responsible for the security of the cloud, and you are responsible for the security in the cloud. So, for instance, the cloud provider will be responsible for protecting their data center, with camera monitoring, fire suppression, to protect the infrastructure that they provide you. But you need to protect your data, you need to protect your users. So some some example of mechanism that we could have is what we call identity and access management. It's basically who can access my data and what they can do with data. I think a second topic is about, of course, encrypting your data, whether it's in transit or it's at rest, stored on your servers. You can also, of course, but that's for personal data, perform anonymization, pseudonymization of personal data. For some solutions, you can also have some data classification mechanism. I'm thinking about solutions like Microsoft 365, where you can put labels on your data, on your documents. For example, you're going to put a label top secret, and whenever you're working on a document which is top secret, you can define some rules. For example, to block forwarding the document to someone else, or just to block the document to not go to the outside world. So I think there are a lot of things that we can do and that cloud providers offer as features. But then when you are in the cloud, you still have to control all that. And I'm talking about screening maybe your traffic, monitoring your logs to know every time who has access to what information, what do they do at what time, and so on. And perform regular penetration testing, I would say.
Okay.
That seems fair.
That seems fair. Now, I'm eager to go to the next one because it's about soci-geopolitics. And I love those because that means politics. So, we all know how dependent the world is, but particularly the Europe, on US hyperscale cloud providers. Well, I don't want to mention names, but I think we all know them. So there has been, or there is still an ongoing debate in Europe on how to make the continent more sovereign, and there is an initiative called Gaia X. So the idea is to develop a sort of competitive, secure, trustworthy federation of data infrastructure for the continent, for Europe. So what do you think about this project? If it's too ambitious, do you think it will finally work out?
I think it's a good question, and it's the hot topic, I would say, since sovereign cloud, we talk about that for maybe 5 years. Gaia X, it's something which is hot topic since a few weeks, few months. But maybe just to start with a short definition around Gaia X, I think the initiative came from Germany and France, actually from the German industry very initially. And the need was really for companies and suppliers to work closer to each other, to exchange data and so on. So they needed an infrastructure which is interoperable, which is trusted, and also not confronted with issue of vendor lock-in. So potentially, having a lot of exchange of data and not be stuck with one solution, with one provider. So the whole idea of Gaia X is really, like you said, it's about building a data infrastructure that follows some key principle. The first principle is really interoperability, meaning that you have technical standards, you have semantic standards. So companies can really exchange data and speak the same language. That's the first thing. There is a question of sovereignty, of course, because I can control my data. I know exactly where it is stored, and I know who can access it. And portability. It means also that we can move the data between any cloud providers. So these are the core principles. So for me, Gaia X is about really creating an ecosystem in Europe of cloud and data services, but protected by EU laws. Talking about GDPR, for example. But it could also offer an access to a repository of data that business can use for their own needs. And I'm thinking about typical use case will be to access the health data of EU citizen, data which could be anonymized. And then we use it and we can build application on top of that. So the main purpose is not to build another hyperscaler and to be in direct competition. I would say it's more a layer on top of that. Right now, so we are very much in the early stages, because We are talking about use cases right now per industry. This is what they call data spaces. And we have different data spaces. We have, for example, healthcare, we have finance, we have energy, industry 4.0. And the first services should be released by the end of this year, I guess. So we are still at the beginning of the process. Now, what I think is, I mean, the idea is great because if the idea succeeds, it will really facilitate the exchange of data and ensure that my data, that I have control to my data. So I ensure its sovereignty. So if I take, for example, the case of the healthcare sector, today there are very, very low exchange of information between pharmaceutical company, between doctors, between hospitals. With Gaia X, I think this could change. So we could maybe cross different sources of information, make predictions. So we could really produce value around data. And this data today, I think it's underutilized. It's maybe sleeping. We do not extract the whole value of this data. And probably Gaia X would help adding value to our data. So I think it could, yeah, sorry.
No. I just wanted to say that it seems to be a very timely and necessary project.
Mhm.
And I had a question, Stefan. Sorry for the interruption. I guess this foresee also to have or to establish data centers in Europe in certain countries. Of course, I don't think it's that developed. The project maybe it is. I don't know, but that was my question. If it foresees to have physical places, locations where the data can be stored, the European data flowing.
Well, I think is to leverage what is already existing. Yeah? And I'm taking the example of Luxembourg, where we already have a strong infrastructure in terms of data center and networks. I think it will be more regarding the layer which is on top of infrastructure, really to build the standards for having data which can be interoperable. Huh?
Okay, very interesting indeed. And let's see how what are the next steps. Now I would like to jump to another topic, also I guess hot topic, because well, sometimes it's easy to feel like there is a digital weightlessness with the cloud. We don't need CDs, DVDs, external hard drives.
Connected.
And yeah, we can just dump our data in the cloud. But as you mentioned, there is a physical storage facility. And from what I read, it has a negative environmental impact because data centers, they take large amount of energies to power, and they need to be on 24 hours a day to ensure that access to data never drops, never stops. And they also need to be cooled. So how could cloud storage become greener? Is it possible?
Well, I think first of all, with cloud, you can have much more efficient usage of infrastructure. And if we take the example, let's say of 50 companies that host their IT infrastructure on premise, and then they're moving into the cloud, there definitely we will have energy consumption saving, a reduction of CO2 emissions. Why? It's because we are mutualizing resources. We're going to mutualize servers, we're going to mutualize cooling system, networks, and so on. And I think it's like moving from individual cars, to taking the bus. So I think cloud can really help reducing on that point. The point is really the amount of data which is growing and growing all the time. And now everything is smart. We have smart cities, we have smart health. So we are going to collect all the time more and more data. So indeed, I think that it's a hot topic, and we need to make sure that we consume the least possible energy on data center side. if we take the hyperscaler today, they are committing already to be 100% renewable energy. For example, to implement wind farm, to implement solar farm. They have already a plan, and one of them already communicated that by 2025 it will be full green. I think another point is really related to the cooling, because you may know that out of the total energy consumption of a data center, 40% is just for cooling system. So I think that's one focus area. And I think the location of the data center is important, because the more you will put it into the north, the more you will benefit from the lower temperature, and you will need less cooling power to cool your equipment. You can also, in your data center, you can increase temperatures. I think 10 years ago, everybody was cooling their infrastructure at 18 degrees, but now equipment are much more efficient, and they can support up to 30 degrees. So I'm not sure about the hyperscaler, but at least what we advise to our clients who have their own data center, they could increase temperature up to 27, 28 degrees, to reduce the consumption on that part. The fact of using also new technologies. I won't go too much into detail, but in the past we were using what we call virtual machines, and it was less efficient technology than, for example, serverless, what we use today. And also, what we advise also our clients who still have infrastructure on premise is maybe to reconsider the refreshing cycle, because some clients replace their equipment every 5 years. But sometimes for some equipment, we can maybe replace them every 7 years, 8 years, 10 years, provided that the supplier still offers some support. So I do think, yes, that you can make infrastructure greener. Public cloud providers are committing to that. And you can do a lot. If for clients who still have infrastructure on premise, there are a lot of actions that can be done.
Okay, thank you.
I think we are almost, reaching the end of the interview of the podcast today. Stéphane, I have one last question. If there is anything you can add, or any super final recommendation to companies navigating cloud transformation, or willing to navigate this transformation?
Well, super final recommendation, I don't know. But I think a few years ago, cloud was a buzzword, but today it's really a reality. I mean, we are really in the middle of that. For some of the clients, is the new normal. They're just thinking cloud first, and then their whole organization is already ready for that. And even we see many editors that are just thinking cloud first. When they release new version of software, is just cloud. It's not for software to be installed on premise.
That's right. Yeah.
But in terms of advice, I think I would stick to the one I mentioned earlier. Is really to start as soon as possible and avoid too much planning. Really onboard the whole organization, onboard your people, upskill them. Start maybe with the easiest workload, the one with sensitive data, the one which have, let's say, easy architecture. And to work iteratively.
Okay, I was just that's basically, I summarize that by saying, let's do it. Let's go and do it, and let's learn during the journey. Now, I was just thinking, this having some things in in the cloud, there are some things locally also apply at personal level. So some
That's
things
true.
maybe exactly. I was just thinking, because the other day I love the cloud actually, because I had to recover important password that I didn't remember. And
Typical.
it wasn't one of my secret cloud files. But then, there are things that I guess shouldn't be just there. On my Google Photos, one day if Google decides that we need to pay fortunes to recover them, that I will be in trouble because they have thousands of them stored there. So
Yeah, or you can reduce the risk and distribute them between Google, between Apple, between. So in a way, you could maybe reduce the risk, but it can always happen.
Oh, but that's a very good one. Now the problem then comes, which is remembering the password. But well, this is our digital life. I think it was a very nice conversation, Stéphane. Thanks a lot. You have
Thank you to you.
enlightened us.
Definitely.
And well, as you may know, this is TechTalk, technology made simple over a cup of coffee. And now Carla will say, or tea. And
Or
then
any
now,
other drink. And now
yes, I wanted to ask Stefan if he
Yes.
prefers any other drink. I would say Aperol Spritz because we are, facing summer almost. So which is your favorite drink, Stefan?
Well, that's the toughest question for today, I guess. No, I think it's water, and for during a very very warm time period, I think a cup of a glass of beer is good also.
Okay, that's very good. I thought you wanted to say like
Water,
something like wine based because you are French. I
Well,
guess.
yes, but I lived in Guatemala, and sorry, maybe my favorite drink is Zacapa. Guatemala
Oh,
rum. That's that's gold. You should try it.
okay, that's
I've
very
never
interesting.
tried,
Me
but
neither. Me
I'll keep
neither.
it in mind.
Exactly. Well, I would rather go for a pisco sour, maybe.
Of course, Luis.
Well, so thanks a lot, Stefan. It
Thank
was
you.
again
Thank you.
nice talking to you, and to all of you, our dear listener. Until the next episode, thanks a lot. Have a very lovely week and weekend. Ciao.
And that's all for today. This is Tech Talk, technology made simple over a cup of coffee. Thank you for listening, and until the next episode.